little bit so you understand it. So in the unit demographics is where you basically say that you're going to use EVV. So whether that's mobile edge or clinical edge. In our system, mobile edge and clinical edge work just slightly different because mobile edge is 100% a disconnect app. So it can be connected or disconnected. Clinical edge, you guys know, it has to be in a connected mode. So we recommend that if you're going to use clinical edge and mobile, clinical edge, basically put the mobile edge app on the device for your clinicians so that your clinicians would punch in and punch out on mobile edge so they would never not have the ability to punch in, capture GPS, because sometimes on a disconnect and a connected mode that can be a little bit cumbersome. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right, and the beauty of that is that when you put that on their device, when they punch in, it will automatically punch them in on clinical edge. So let me just pull up my clinical edge so that I can show you guys. I was thinking you guys were all unskilled. So when you turn on GPS and EVV on clinical edge, it basically will make it where they need to punch in and punch out. They can no longer put their time in and time out on a visit. They have to punch in and punch out. So I don't have a visit, so let me go over here and let me find, I'll do Alicia and add a schedule for her for today. Sorry. So once you have a visit for today, so let's just do a skilled nursing visit for today. So even though they use the mobile edge app, it will connect with clinical edge and punch them in. So they don't have to punch in twice. They punch in on the app, it'll put the punch in time on the device. When they punch out, it's going to put the punch out time on the device for them as well. So you can see how I no longer on clinical edge put my time in and time out. There's a punch in and a punch out. Again, you can try it with clinical edge, but a lot of our agencies, because of the way clinical edge captures GPS versus the way mobile edge captures GPS, a lot of our agencies have found that it's just better to use mobile edge for the punch in and punch out. Everything
makes sense? Sorry,
yep.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just wondering if you guys would be able to record this session as well.
Sure. Gonna hit the David's recording it.
Yep, I'm sorry, I should announce it. I am recording it. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So on the business unit demographics, you're going to say, hey, we're punching in and we're going to use EVV for clinical edge. Now, do you guys do shift work or are you doing visits?
We do both.
Okay. So you can, the other thing you have the ability to do is if you want to block them punching out until they have completed their documentation, you can do that as well. Most agencies will say, no, I don't want to. Some of the agencies that we have that are shift will say, hey, I don't want them punching out until they've completed their documentation because they shouldn't be leaving a shift without their documentation being complete. So that is 100% configurable by you guys, that you have the ability to capture that.
And Kathleen?
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I mean, that's a great feature, and I know how that could really work well for us. Is that able to be employee specific, or is this just overall?
It's overall for EVV. It's overall, you choose yes or no. Visits and hourly services are broken out. So if you say, hey, this is for hourly, then the hourly services, those shifts that you're doing, you could prevent it, but it wouldn't prevent it for the visits unless you checked on the visit. So again, one of the options you guys will have the ability to see. Okay. All righty. The other thing is that they will sign on clinical edge like they always do, and we will have you check skip client signature because you're actually getting that on the phone. They don't need to get it on the Mobile Edge app. So we'll default the settings when we set you guys up that if they're signing your form, they don't need to sign the glass. If you want them signing on Mobile Edge on glass, then you just have them sign on Mobile Edge on glass. Okay. Then the next thing is on your group bill rules for those payers that require you to use telephony, and you guys are in Arizona, and I'm pretty sure that's Sandata, Arizona. You will add the telephony rule set to the payer, and we'll show you guys exactly how to do that. And so this has all of the specific things that have to be in place to push those visits over to Sandata when the visit punch in and punch out have been completed. So basically, you guys will we'll train you on what each one of these mean and how it works when we set you up. But basically, so for example, anybody who's going to work in the EVV exception queue has to have a unique email in the system. So those are all the things that we're going to go through when we set you guys up. But these are the specific things that your state said have to be in place and that you don't have the ability to change. Questions about that? Okay, so let me bring up my phone and I'm going to show you. It's taking just a second. There we go. Now you guys should see my phone. Let me just go. So it is an app that they download onto their device, just like they do Clinical Edge. It works connected and disconnected. So even if I get to the client's home and they don't have cellular or they don't have internet, they can punch in, they can punch out, and it's going to basically register those. It's not going to push them over to the back office until the device gets back into a connected mode. But just know that it is, can't type and talk. Just know that it's capturing that GPS at the time that they're actually punching in and punching out. So here's my visit for today. So you can see that this is the visit that we added. And so all your nurse would do, they get all the information. So they will see the safety precautions, allergies. My client also has a care plan, which your clients pretty sure will not. So your nurse is just going to have to punch in and punch out. They won't see the care plan sitting on here. My client just happens to have both. So they just punch in. It's that fast. It'll give them their GPS and it gives them the date and time that they punched in. I'm just going to address these. This is if you put your aides on it, this is what they do. They say, did they do the task? Did they not do the task? If they didn't do the task, they have to choose the reason that they didn't do the task, and it puts a red X. Your nurse is not going to see any of that. Your cases are nothing but skilled cases. When your nurse checks in, she will just see the information about the client, she will see the punch in, and she will see the punch out. So this is the feature that you guys can turn off on Mobile Edge. So if you don't want them to have to, the client to sign their name on glass, you absolutely don't have to get them to do that. You'll just skip the signature because that's already built into your form. So once you've hit done, then they're going to see on their device that that visit has been completed, that they did it on the 29th. This was their arrival time. This was the end time. So questions about the app?
No.
Okay. They can very see their canceled schedules. So if you canceled somebody for today, they'll see it. They can change their password. They see the agency information. So if they need to call you, they can easily call directly from the app. They can map directly where they are so that you can see all of that. If you want them to use Clinical Edge, like I said, you can have them, let me move this I hit the client. You can have them punch in and punch out on Clinical Edge, but again, sometimes that does create just a little bit of an issue with GPS, just because of the way it captures it. But you can see that I punched in and punched out on Mobile Edge. That's all I'm doing, and you can see how it automatically added it to my Clinical Edge visit note. So questions about that so far? Okay, let's go back to the main application, and there's a few things I'm going to show you. You guys, I assume, are currently using Notes QA today.
Yes,
Correct?
we are.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. So on Notes QA, it will look just slightly different when you turn it on. So let me just going to put all this in the forms. So now you're going to see in Notes QA, you will see their punch in and their punch out. So you're going to see that green means everything was good. Red means that you've got a little bit of problem. So you can see it's telling me on my punch in, my GPS was not received, or the service time for the EV was off. So it does let you know right away when you've got a problem on a visit. For the most part, it will partially verify visits, but it is not going to put them as a verified billable payable visit until the paperwork's approved as well. So again, I don't know how many forms you guys have coming into your agency, but the approving of the forms verifies it. And if we go up to the calendar and we look at the calendar.
And Kathleen, when you say approving of the forms, are you just talking about completing the QA process?
Yes. So do you have all your visit notes going into QA as well, or do you just have like your assessments, your plans of care?
Assessments, plan of care, and then we put any new hires on a
Perfect.
QA trial.
So your nurses that aren't on the QA trial, when they sign and submit, they're going to automatically verify if there was no problem with the GPS, right? Or the time in and time out. So on your visits, you're never going to have a time in and time out problem because you're scheduling it at 0 time. So it's always going to accept your time, right? It's your hourly shift. So if you scheduled it from 8 to noon and I got there at 8:30 and I left at 3:30, that's going to throw it into the GPS exception. So it'll be for your people that are signing their visit documentation and submitting it. Once you clear the GPS, you're going to have a totally verified visit ready to go. And I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. But for your visits that are not, you haven't approved the paperwork and they're in the EVV exception queue, they're going to come over onto the calendar and show you that they're in the EVV exception queue. So this is where you guys will be monitoring and watching those visits so that you can push them over to SAN data to get to your Medicaid. So you're going to come into your EVV exceptions and you're going to pull up your visit. So here's my visit for today. And I'm going to go view the edit and details. And so this is going to tell me everything that's wrong with that visit. So basically, like I said, because my visit doesn't have a time in and it doesn't have a time out, my real problem is my GPS. Your state will tell us which exceptions you guys have to choose a reason for. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. But there will be a little exclamation point here, and you're going to have to come down and pick why was that clinician outside of the acceptable range that they should have been for GPS. And so you just click it, save it, resolve it. It's going to tell you who resolved it, the date and time they resolved it. So as your staff has resolved all of those, then it's going to become a verified visit. You do have the ability to correct anything that you needed to correct. So if they were late because they walked in and the client fell and they called you and said, hey, I was late punching in because I needed to address the client first, you always have the ability to edit it on the schedule and then come here and correct it or correct it on the EVV exception queue. So once you've cleared it out of the EVV exception queue, it is now going to be a verified visit with the time in and time out. And it will have a telephone and it will have the visit notes. So if I go, I'm going to pull up a client so I can show you both. Let me go back a couple of months. I don't get to show Clinical Edge a whole bunch on EVV. So when you do punch in, punch out, and the visit documentation's been attached, it's going to give you the phone to say, hey, they did the punch in, they did the punch out, it's GPS, and it's going to attach the visit note like you guys are used to seeing now. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Questions?
So just, yes, I have a question, Kathleen. So right now, our scheduler is scheduling out the visits like, 8 to 9 a.m. or whatever the time may be. So if she weren't to put any times, it would just carry over from when they're clocking in and out
Yes.
using Mobile Edge?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So if you're doing visits, that's really the way you want to do them, because otherwise they're going to spend their entire day fixing those dates and those times, because you know how visits are, right? Yep. It's really the hourly cases that you have to do time in and time out. And those, again, you might have to correct some time in and time out, but hopefully your employees are getting there on time. You do have a variance that they'll ask you, hey, what do you want the variance to be? So if you say, okay, we're going to make the variance 15 minutes, that means if the employee punches in 15 minutes early or 15 minutes late, it's not going to trigger the EVV exception. It's only going to trigger it if they're outside of that variance.
Got it. Okay. That'll actually save some time then for the scheduler who's putting in those times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yep. And so you can see now this is just how it looks today. So now it'll be an extra phone that appears on that. When you've got this in a verified visit state, we push it over to send data. So we send, I believe, schedules. I'm not sure if we send everything in Arizona that it says. You can see we have a ton of rule sets, so I don't want to quote them. But everything that the state of Arizona said that send data needed to have in place, we have in place. So, if we needed to send a reason for a canceled visit, when they go to cancel a visit, it's going to populate for them to put in the reason. It'll send over the schedule, I believe, and I believe I know it sends it over when it's in a verified state. So when we send this to send data and you now submit your invoicing, you should be really in the good, because this is going to match exactly what you guys are submitting on your invoice to them. Questions about that? Okay, I want to show you what one looks like that you have to choose the reasons. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what let me pull it up this way. I have so many environments because I'm testing this. So I have all different kinds of clients and caregivers, and okay, Melvin. So sometimes I lose sight of who I have. So if your state requires a reason, so this is a GPS conflict, it will have a little reason code. And when you go down below, this will be loaded with the exact reasons that your state says that you can use. So they will choose exactly what the reason and the action was. And when you choose the reason and the action, I think it makes me also put in comments. Once you choose that reason, action, and comment, end time must be greater than start time. Well, I won't keep working with this one, but once you put in those reasons, when it's a verified visit, we also push that reason that you chose and the action that you chose over to send data for you. So we're doing all of that for you. All you're having to do is clear it off of the EVV exceptions and making sure that everything is working and right the way it's supposed to be. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Any questions about that?
And then if anybody is on hold, hospital holds and everything like that, it would not be triggering any
Correct.
SAN data
Yep.
issues, correct? Okay.
Correct. Yep. You also will see on the EVV exception queue, and I don't have any here because I don't push them over to send data, but if you have any non-scheduled exceptions, so they can't find the Medicaid number, whatever issue there potentially could be, you will see those on the non-scheduled exceptions. So you'll be able to know that you have, maybe your Medicaid number is not right that you have on the client. So somebody needs to research it and fix it so that that visit will then push back over for you so that you can get it taken care of. So yeah, everything's pretty much in the system. So you guys are living in the system. Everything's good. And then just going back to Notes QA, when you guys fix on the EVV exception queue, you will see it in Notes QA as well. So your clinical supervisor will see, hey, this has now been cleared up. It's always going to show that the GPS was out of range for that visit. Now it's showing me my punch in good. So it's always going to show you the EVV exceptions that you had that you cleared, and you'll always see those on the schedule as well. So if I go back to the schedule, see if I've got any here. If I come down and I go to view EVV exceptions, it's always going to show you this was the GPS conflict, those with exceptions on this visit. This is who made the change to those, and this is the date and time that they modified those change. So questions? Pretty good. You just work out of one system.
I don't have any questions. I'm kind of excited to implement this. I think it's going to be more efficient and cut down on some things. So
Yes.
thank you so much for this demonstration. I greatly appreciate it. I'm always open to learning new systems and new things. So thank you.
Drew,
Oh, you're welcome.
Drew, Danielle, any other questions from you guys?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. It was a lot of information. So what I found is the best way for me to learn these systems is once we get an opportunity to work with them hands-on. But I would definitely appreciate a copy of this recording so I can reference back to it whenever we get a chance to play with it. And one of my biggest things that I love about all of your guys' products is how customizable they are. It makes it really helpful that we're able to change settings and kind of adapt to the needs of our specific agency. So thanks for building such a great product.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're welcome.
Glad you enjoy it. Danielle, anything from you?
No, just a copy of the video as well would be perfect.
Okay, will do. So I'll get that rendered and out to you guys. I will. Yep, no problem. I'll send it to you. It'll be a link that you click on that'll actually start the video. So guys, if it's okay, I will go ahead and send you the amendment for Mobile Edge, so that way you can look at what the pricing is, and if you guys are ready, we can get you started with it.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to get it over to some folks for approvals and stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely. If you can send that over, that would be great.
All righty. I'll work on that. In the meantime, you guys have a great weekend, a good Friday as well, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.